By looking at and interpreting ancient texts, legends, and stories through the eyes of modern people, we begin to understand that Earth's ancient past is much more exciting and mysterious than we ever imagined. When personal opinions are not tied to strict beliefs laid down by modern scholars, you realize that our ancestors were trying to tell us something. Millions of people around the world are known to believe that ancient humans were visited by beings from beyond Earth thousands of years ago. By interpreting our ancient history with modern, unprejudiced eyes, we embrace the possibility that our ancestors were visited by a master race of aliens rather than gods. Such a visit is brilliantly described in the Bible, the story of Ezekiel. Ezekiel's vision of the so-called chariot with wheels leaves much room for interpretation. Many ancient astronaut theorists believe that the Merkaba may not have been a wheeled chariot, but a spacecraft or some type of space shuttle that landed on Earth in the distant past. One of the most famous authors in support of this view was Erich von Däniken, who provided compelling evidence through research pointing to the book of Ezekiel and what Ezekiel may have witnessed in the past. In fact, von Däniken's theory was so surprising that it piqued the interest of a NASA scientist who decided to disprove von Däniken's theory. In von Däniken's book They Were Astronaut Gods, the Swiss author expounds Ezekiel's vision of a space shuttle rather than a divine chariot. This idea led Joseph F. Blumrich to try to refute von Däniken's theory. However, the more Blumrich researched, the less convinced he became that he could disprove von Däniken's theory. Finally, he started writing a book. Blumrich soon realized through his research that Ezekiel could be describing a spaceship that landed on Earth, rather than just a celestial chariot. In fact, Blumrich was so convinced that he patented his own omnidirectional wheel. Most importantly here, it's worth mentioning that Blumrich himself realized through his own research that the biblical depiction could be a spaceship. The Book of Ezekiel is a piece of ancient literature, one of the first to be written in the first person. Unlike other books written in the third person, Ezekiel describes seeing a chariot with wheels coming towards him from heaven. This imaginary chariot is piloted by a humanoid figure. What does that mean? This means they are not human, but could be humanoid in nature, explain ancient astronaut theorists. Also, Ezekiel describes a chariot landing, which sounds a lot like a description of a spaceship landing. The storm, lightning, and bright lights that Ezekiel described sounded like a modern spacecraft landing on land. Apparently, it is as misunderstood as many other technologies of the past, because people who lived on Earth thousands of years ago, without any similar technology, could not distinguish between advanced technology and gods. But most interestingly, Ezekiel even describes the fire driving the so-called chariot as shining metal. I looked and saw a storm coming from the north, an immense cloud, with lightning and sparks, surrounded by a brilliant light. The four were similar in appearance. Each will seem to be intertwined with the other. 17 When they moved, they went in the four directions of the four faces, and did not turn as they went. 18 Their rims were tall and impressive, and they were full of eyes all around. 19 When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved. 22 Over the heads of the living creatures was what looked like a vault, glittering like ice, and impressive. Ezekiel 1. You can't deny that Ezekiel's description sounds pretty familiar to how we would describe modern spacecraft taking off and landing on Earth. However, not only does Ezekiel seem to offer an incredible and detailed description of the alleged spacecraft, he also describes its occupants, explain ancient astronaut theorists. And in the midst of the fire were four figures that looked like living creatures. In appearance they had the form of a man, 6 but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. 7 Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf and shone like burnished bronze. 8 Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands. The 4 had faces and wings. 9 And their wings touched one another. Ezekiel 1. What we have to take into account is that if the prophet really saw an alien ship, he gave the description according to the understanding that people had at the time. Imagine that the prophet had a vision of our modern trains and stations. Like, would he describe the scene? Maybe one. And people, as if they were in caves, heard a deafening noise coming from a crack in the rock. A strong wind swept through the cave, but the people did not seem to be afraid. A metal serpent with eyes of fire comes out from inside the crack and stops next to the people, who for some reason do not flee. On the contrary, the serpent opens its many lateral mouths, and as if in a trance the people enter, being swallowed by the serpent. It closes all the mouths and leaves towards the crack in the rock. For lovers of ufological theories, the Bible is a full dish to find reports involving extraterrestrials in the past. But what about you? What do you think of all this? Would the prophet Ezekiel have witnessed a divine apparition? An extraterrestrial visit? Or just another story like many told? Leave your comment, your like, subscribe to the channel. A big hug to all.